So I am joined by Jason and Jevon. Jason, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Jason, one of the co-founders of Alexander Barnes.
Fabulous. And this is?
Yeah, I'm Jevon, the co-founder.
Great. So Jevon, what exactly is Alexander Barnes and what kind of work do you actually do?
Yeah, Alexander Barnes is a regulatory search partner for FinTechs in regulated markets.
Who do you work with and what stage of growth would those FinTechs be?
Yeah, FinTechs that are providing payments, trading, lending, digital banking products, typically from seed all the way through to Series D.
What stage would a hiring manager approach you as a potential search partner?
Yeah, I think when we look at pre-revenue businesses, seed, pre-seed, that's where the most senior assignments happen for us in our market. So chief compliance officers or regulatory heads. And as those businesses go through later stage funding, like Series B, they become a high growth organization. That's where we see, some of the more supportive structures happen in, our clients' organizations. So not necessarily in any single time in their sophistication will they utilize our support for anything particular, but as they become more sophisticated, they have different needs.
Is there sometimes a particular challenge that you're having to solve with some of these hires for them?
Yeah, there is, especially in the fintech space. A lot of the approaches we get are for companies going for different licenses. It could be an EMI license. It could be for a vast registration within crypto. And actually it is quite challenging to find people that have led these projects. So a lot of candidates may have been part of the process, but clients are actually looking for people that have led the projects, been successful in the application, because the challenge at the moment with businesses going forward is if they don't get it right first time, the FCA will push back and there'll be problems and challenges to getting this approved, which will delay and have backlogs for the business. So it's really important that we get the key people. And I think our relationships over the last couple of months from working projects like this have really helped us being able to fill these positions quite quickly with the right people.
So how would you approach a critical search like a CCO or an MLRO, especially when there is that sensitivity requirement?
Yeah, I think it's really important that it's treated with care. I think, you have a conversation with the client will give you an understanding of the current situation. Can be a number of avenues, what's happening with the business. And typically we'll agree a criteria with the client. That would be speak to people in our network first, build out a long list, but the conversation would be more around the role and the type of business as opposed to the client. So it may be a fintech payment business is going for XYZ or needs to be done. If the candidate is bought in and happy and wants to proceed with that kind of role and business, we'll then send a long list to our client. The client will then decide who they're keen on meeting. We would then speak to the client and the candidate. There'd be an NDA disclosure, which would be signed, and then the client would release who they are effectively.
We've talked about the fact that you're working with, say, a lot of fintechs, but why would they choose you over some of the other players that are in the market at the moment?
Jason and I, throughout our careers, have worked not just in the UK, but over Europe, the US. And I think that, a lot of these businesses now, it is a real need to be a very globally structured business where they face off to regulators in Europe, UK, US. By partnering with a firm that has had that exposure, naturally you get, a broader network of individuals in local markets. And a lot of these firms have to have the ability to act local, think global. The global program has to all plug into it, itself and have the protection to make sure that, a decision that you make in one of your geographies isn't going to impact what you're doing in another.
What do your best client relationships look like?
Everyone understands what needs doing, but to a level where I think there's a lot of respect and we can talk to each other pretty straight. We work with everyone on Slack, so it's one of our key metrics that we do. It's part of our process. The reason being, emails can get lost. Clients don't want you to pester them via the phone call. So having an instant message built in with Alexander Barnes and the client is really helpful. We have a weekly cadence with our clients. So typically our approach would be the Slack channel. Once a week, we'd have a check-in call. We would do a market map process where we would outline the market, who's available, who's not, pay rates, etc. And once that's outlined and they're bought in and they can see what we're doing actually is going to benefit them, we would class that as a good process and a client that we can work with and they can get the job done, really well.
Yeah, and I think there's a shared urgency in that as well. The best clients that we've worked with prioritize the need that we have complete engagement, open forum to communicate and speak when we need to, and having all the decision makers in the same channel, whether that's the cadence called Slack, having the ability to have everybody in the conversations and on the same page is what really has led to the most important hires that really matter to our client.
So when would you say no to a client?
When we first started, we were doing a bit of everything, maybe working more contingent. We don't work that way anymore. Typically, we have to have control, and the control is not purely for us, it's for the client as well. And we have a format in terms of how we work, which would be regular contact with the key decision makers, a cadence call. We use Slack. We have a timeline of when we're going to send CVs or resumes. Interview blocks, need to have diaries for when people are available over the coming weeks. And if it's not exclusive or retained, and that's not being exclusive or retained to benefit us, we just need the control to be able to place these roles to the level that we need. We've got evidence showing, I think, that when we're doing market map phases and we're diving into the real detail and doing things correctly and actually looking at where people could come from. We've had people, Irish people based in different countries that are moving back and relocating. We've got different channels of doing it, but it has to be controlled from both sides, or we're not going to work it really at this.
The clients that we probably want to steer away from are those where it's low commitment. There's no real structure in what expectations are. They have no clear timelines. They have no clear process of how they come to a decision. I think that it's not necessarily about control, but more about commitment and having a real understanding to be joined up.
What else do you think it is about Alexander Barnes that keeps those top tier candidates coming back?
We were talking about this yesterday, actually. We're in New York now, and we've been in London the last couple of weeks. We've actually been blown away by where the NASDAQ is, and some of our clients are on the billboards. And we were speaking to a founder a couple of days ago from a crypto business that we met, and talking about some of our clients, and he couldn't really understand how we were working with some of these brands. And I think it's just from our level of understanding of the market. We're working in a kind of a niche space where it's kind of a level candidate that we're constantly talking to, and obviously speaking to these people on a day-to-day basis. I think that we're really kind of double downing in this space. And I think candidates seeing the brands that we're working with and the level of jobs that we're continuously getting, that we can reach out to candidates freely without having vacancies and build relationships with them that can then last longer and evolve.
16 months in, do you have those moments where you step back and go, we're nailing this?
No. not nailing it. I think that, for us, it was about setting some foundations when you initially start up. This is the first project I've been a part of that's, I'm directly in the foundations of it. And it's quite nerve-wracking to begin with. You have a bunch of limitations. You have no brand awareness, but quite quickly, if we look back 16 months, we're incredibly, chuffed with what we've been able to achieve and put together. Are we nailing it? I don't think there is such a thing. I think we're, both two individuals that constantly challenge ourselves and really hold ourselves accountable to continually get better. And I think that, as we sit right now, we're really excited that we've got to pass the first chapter. And I think now it's going to be a really exciting period for, both us, our business, but, those that we can bring in and join this.
Yeah, for sure. What gets you both out of bed in the morning?
Good question. I think when you set up yourself, it's obviously, like Jevon said, nerve-wracking to start, but it's generally exciting because it's your baby, as you say. But you can actually make a difference to your life, to candidates' lives, to clients' lives, and the impact that you can see, the smiles on people's faces when you do a good job. And I think the level you can work, the detail you can go into when it's your own versus maybe working in a bigger business when you've got a team or you've got multiple jobs that are coming at you. When you're working with a handful of clients, to the level of detail that we're doing and making a difference. And, we're doing lots of work there. We're landing in the UK and we're breaking into Europe and breaking into the US, and then US companies, we're breaking back into the UK. So it's really exciting to see this evolving. And I think just looking at it long term, the bigger it gets, the more exciting it gets. And I think, it's just really cool.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add is, when we've worked for, other sales jobs, other recruitment businesses, there isn't anything that quite starts your engine as being the holder of the keys, being involved in the decision making, having the ability to, take huge pride in what we're doing. It's really liberating, I would say. We're at that point now where, clearly we really want to challenge ourselves to diversify into, different parts of fintech, whether that's, geographically, whether that's from different products that, we want to continue to explore. I think there's a lot of change happening in fintech at the minute, certainly with, the innovation of different technologies, and whether that's for consumers or whether that's institutionally facing. I think that, we're in a really good position now to challenge ourselves to, continue on the trajectory that we're on and generally try challenge some of the opportunities that are out there.
And I think it's no different to what you're doing before, but when you're doing it yourself, even sometimes you're blown away by the level of candidates you're speaking to, the businesses you're talking to, and actually that we've done this from nothing. And actually, 16 months ago or 20 months ago was an idea. I'm pestering him, should we ever go at this? He's saying no. And then we get to a point that we build an idea from a name to a website to actually the first day, we've moved into a small office now. So yeah, as it keeps evolving, I think it's really exciting.
What was the trigger moment then that made you go, yeah, fine, let's do this?
We were both directors in a business, I think, and that business was then at a point where we needed to be back on the tools, back talking to candidates, back, sort of working positions, making placements. I think we've gone from managing big teams. And if we were going to go back to actually being recruiters again, why not do it ourselves? Why not put our own stamp on it, and do things the way we wanted? So started off as a bit of an idea, maybe a bit of a joke. And then as time went on, the more we chatted about it, again, it just kind of
started to fall.
Yeah, I love that. And did you look at sort of any other routes to setting up by yourselves, and what made you launch with RecruitHub?
We did, didn't we? I think that, initially we explored a few different channels. I think obviously getting an investor involved is probably the most traditional and obvious way that businesses would do that, whether, we looked at that or whether we, quite literally, utilize savings or self-funded. I think that was another route that we could explore. But what I think specifically we really liked about RecruitHub was the support. When we look at the actual operational support that we received, and we could see quite clearly this is how you could launch your own company. I'm not a finance professional. I've worked with Jason long enough to know he's not either. When you start to look at what actually goes into starting a firm, and we really, we experienced it, didn't we? Whether that was like building a brand, coming up with the copy for the website, how we could take our nuggets of ideas and then put that into practice and build a business around it. At that time, it was very clear that RecruitHub were probably the best source of support to kind of go and action that.
I think we spoke to a few investors to start with, and there were some good offers. I think what stood out for us was like salespeople typically, I can't answer for everyone, are typically good at sales or good at building relationships, aren't very good at the technical side, maybe tech, finance. And we wanted to be able to hit the ground running and speak to candidates, speak to clients and make movements in the market and not be caught up in the websites, marketing collateral that was going to bog us down. So actually the overall package and support that we were getting from finance, from HR, from marketing, the people and how they all came across, it just felt like a really good fit. And yeah, I can't speak highly of them enough, to be honest. I think it's really helped us get to this point, and I don't imagine we'd have been at this point in terms of where we're performing now if it hadn't been for them.
No, and the only thing I'd add as well is we previously worked for a global recruitment firm, and going from a business that had loads of support, loads of senior experienced talent that you could benchmark ideas off, as soon as we started to action the idea of starting our own firm, it's really daunting. Like, obviously you're taking a huge risk, and, your own success, your family's, success kind of depends on how well that goes. I must give, Edmund his kudos. Like, he made the process of setting up completely digestible and understandable. He's a super smart guy, and I think that really probably played a really big role in our decision making in the very kind of start of this.
What's the ambition for Alexander Barnes? Talk to me about the future.
Like long term, we've got a couple of core areas, a couple of key locations that we work in. I think if we're to think really far into the future, we would probably like to have a presence more in the UK, maybe more in the Nordic region, particularly Sweden is where we do some work, and have a presence in the US. I think they would be the three core areas to look to try to build out. And as we evolve with clients and candidates, to have people on the ground in key locations so we can deal with the demand and expand effectively.
Yeah, and I would say that, one of our particular niches is helping European, UK and US businesses expand into each other's markets. So, we're engaged by a lot of European, UK FinTechs trying to break into the US. There's a few key hires they'd have to make to be able to go and file for a license application. And I think for us, as we look at that ambition of Alexander Barnes, it's like, how do we build a real sound structure of a high performing team that plays a central role in all of these different expansion plans for businesses from this part of the world, to the UK and from the UK to, clearly the US.